On December 30th, 2025, a wellness check was requested for Dr. Spencer Tepe, a 37-year-old dentist who failed to show up at his practice in Athens, Ohio. When friends and police arrived at the couple's home in the Wineland Park neighborhood of Columbus, they made a gruesome discovery. Spencer and his wife, Mo'Nique, were found shot to death in an upstairs bedroom. Miraculously, their 2 young children, ages 1 and 4, and the family dog were found unharmed inside the home, having been left alone for hours after the murders. Early investigation revealed no signs of forced entry, suggesting the killer had access or the couple knew their attacker. Police released a grainy Nest camera video from a neighbor's alley showing a person of interest walking near the home between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. Viewers and investigators noted the suspect's unique, pigeon-toed gait. Public interest peaked when a mysterious April 911 call surfaced, featuring a woman crying at the address. However, the family later clarified the voice was not Mo'Nique's, but likely a guest from a previous gathering. A major controversy erupted when body cam footage revealed that the first officer responding to the wellness check mistakenly went to the wrong address on a parallel street, Summit Street, while the children were still inside the actual crime scene. Despite this error, the homicide unit moved forward with a digital dragnet, using license plate readers, LPRs, to track a vehicle that arrived just before the murders and fled shortly after. On January 10, 2026, the mystery was solved. Dr. David McKee, a 39-year-old vascular surgeon and Mo'Nique's ex-husband, was arrested in Rockford, Illinois. Detectives linked him to the vehicle tracked in the neighborhood and found evidence of him in possession of it during the murder window. McKee and the victims were all Ohio State University alumni, and the divorce, 2017, was revealed to have included a mutual restraining order, contradicting earlier reports that it was purely amicable. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The 325-mile stretch between Rockford, Illinois, and Columbus, Ohio, is a long drive for any traveler, but for David McKee, it represents the final transition from a high-status vascular surgeon to a double murder defendant. As of Monday, January 12, 2026, the logistics of that journey are now in motion. When McKee walked into the Winnebago County courtroom, the silence was heavy. For those who had only seen the grainy, hooded person of interest in the alleyway video, this was the first clear look at the man police say is responsible for the December 30th massacre. Dressed in a yellow jail jumpsuit, his hands shackled to a waist chain, McKee appeared strikingly detached. He offered no emotion, no outbursts, and no explanation. When Judge Donald Shriver asked for his name, the response was a calm, monotone, Michael McKee. His attorney, asserting McKee's right to remain silent and right to counsel, made a strategic move that caught some observers by surprise. McKee waived his right to an extradition hearing. In the world of criminal defense, this is often a sign of a defendant who wants to get on with it, to move the battleground to Ohio where the evidence is held and where his team can begin sifting through the state's discovery. Judge Shriver set a status hearing for January 19th just to ensure the transfer has been completed. By then, McKee is expected to be sitting in the Franklin County Jail. While we await the full prosecution card layout in an Ohio courtroom, the details already emerging suggest a level of premeditation that is chillingly surgical. Detectives didn't just find a car, they found a timeline. The criminal complaint reveals that neighborhood surveillance didn't just catch a man. It caught a digital footprint. License plate readers and private security feeds tracked a vehicle, now confirmed to be registered to McKee, arriving in the Wineland Park area just before the 2 a.m. window and fleeing shortly after 5 a.m. This wasn't a crime of sudden passion. To get from Rockford to Columbus is a nearly 7-hour drive. If McKee is the killer, he spent 7 hours behind the wheel with a 9mm handgun in the car, passing through tolls and gas stations, with every mile affirming a deadly intent. As retired Commander Will Spieler noted, it is almost impossible to argue temporary insanity or a heat-of-the-moment lapse when the suspect had 400 miles of highway to turn back. The narrative that the 2017 divorce was amicable is also beginning to fracture under the weight of new records. While the divorce decree cited incompatibility, we now know that a mutual restraining order was part of those proceedings. While often a standard legal formality in contentious splits, it takes on a darker hue when the ex-husband allegedly resurfaces 8 years later to execute his former wife and her new husband. McKee, an Ohio State graduate, 2014, who met Mo'Nique on campus, had built a life of prestige. He held medical licenses in Illinois and California and lived in a luxury condo in Chicago's Lincoln Park. To his neighbors, he was the guy at the community pool barbecue. To the Columbus Division of Police, he is a man who allegedly used his knowledge of the Tepe's lives, and perhaps a lingering key or knowledge of their home security, to enter the house on North 4th Street without ever breaking a door or smashing a window. As the legal machinery grinds forward, the city of Columbus remains fixated on the two children, ages 4 and 1, who were left in that house for 5 hours after the shots were fired. We now know that when friends finally arrived, they could hear the children crying from outside. The fact that the killer, allegedly their mother's former husband, left them unharmed is one of the few mercies in this case. Yet it raises haunting questions. Did he see them? Did he bypass their rooms to reach the master suite? The community has responded with an outpouring of support, with a GoFundMe for the children surpassing $210,000. They are currently with family, shielded from the media circus that is about to descend on their father's killer's trial. Once McKee arrives in Columbus, the probable cause used to arrest him will be traded for the beyond a reasonable doubt standard of a trial. The prosecution's case will likely rest on a forensic trifecta, matching the 9mm shell casings found at the scene to a weapon owned by or linked to McKee, cell tower pings that place his phone on the route from Illinois to Ohio, the high-definition breadcrumb trail of his vehicle. Michael McKee has signaled he will plead not guilty. He has the resources for a powerhouse defense, and the pigeon-toed gait in the video will likely be a point of fierce contention. For now, the surgeon is in shackles. The next time he speaks, it won't be in a quiet Illinois courtroom, but in front of a Franklin County judge, facing the upgraded charges of premeditated aggravated murder. The light that Spencer and Mo'Nique Tepe brought to the world was extinguished on December 30th, but as the Tepe family said in their statement, this arrest is the first step toward making sure that light, and the truth, is never truly forgotten. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. As the legal system prepares for the transfer of Dr. Michael David McKee from Illinois to Ohio, the investigation has shifted from who to how. In Ohio, a murder charge becomes aggravated murder when the state can prove prior calculation and design. For a man who lived 400 miles away, every mile of that 7-hour drive toward Columbus on December 30th is now being used by prosecutors as a literal roadmap of intent. To understand the man in the yellow jumpsuit, you have to look back at his roots in Zanesville, Ohio. Long before he was a high-stakes vascular surgeon, McKee was a standout student-athlete at Zanesville Bishop Rosecrans High School. He was an academic star and a football standout, a golden boy who seemed destined for the highest levels of success. This ambition led him to The Ohio State University, where he graduated from the College of Medicine in 2014. It was here that his life first intertwined with Mo'Nique Tepe. They were a power couple in the making, a future surgeon and a dedicated educator. But behind the prestige of his medical degree, investigators are now looking for the first signs of the obsessive behavior that allegedly culminated in a double execution a decade later. One of the most haunting details being analyzed by forensic experts is the precision of the attack. Police confirmed that Spencer Tepe was shot multiple times, while Mo'Nique suffered a single, fatal wound to the chest. As a vascular surgeon, Michael McKee spent his career understanding the human body's vulnerabilities, where to cut to save a life, and where a single wound could end one. Detectives are exploring the theory that this wasn't just a murder. It was an execution carried out with the same clinical detachment McKee used in the operating room. There was no ransacking of the home. No jewelry was taken. No electronics were moved. The killer entered a silent house, navigated directly to the second-floor bedroom, and completed a mission before driving 7 hours back to his luxury condo in Chicago. While the vehicle tracking provided the probable cause for the arrest, the 9mm shell casings found near the bed remain the most critical piece of physical evidence. Ballistics experts in Columbus are currently working to determine if those casings match a weapon owned by McKee. If a search of McKee's Lincoln Park residence or his Rockford medical office uncovers a 9mm handgun, or even an empty box of ammunition, it bridges the gap between being in the area and pulling the trigger. Furthermore, investigators are sifting through McKee's electronic search history. They are looking for searches related to the Tepe's address, how to bypass home security, or untraceable 9mm parts. By upgrading the charges to premeditated aggravated murder, the state of Ohio is signaling that they believe they can prove McKee didn't just snap, he plotted. In Ohio, this charge is often a capital offense, though the death penalty is currently under a moratorium. Regardless, the penalty McKee faces is the ultimate end to a once glittering career: life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the world knew him as a suspect in a cold-blooded double homicide to the residents of the Pierre, a luxury high-rise overlooking Chicago's Lincoln Park, Michael McKee was simply the quiet neighbor in the elevator. The contrast between his life in Suite 1205 and the crime scene on North 4th Street in Columbus has left a community of professionals jumpy and searching for answers. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. In a twist that seems lifted from a thriller, one of the primary witnesses to the aftermath of McKee's arrest is Geraldine Carrick, a neighbor who is also a 3-time best-selling true crime author. Carrick, who has spent her career dissecting the minds of serial killers, found herself living just 2 floors below a man who allegedly embodied the very obsession she writes about. Carrick describes McKee as a very pleasant, but increasingly withdrawn man. She recalls chatting with him at the building's pool and barbecue pit, a surgeon who appeared to be living the American dream. But as the investigation into the deaths of Spencer and Mo'Nique Tepe intensified, the luxury of the Pierre became a crime scene. On Saturday, January 10th, the quiet hallways of the 12th floor were flooded with investigators. A 24-hour police guard was stationed outside McKee's door as an Ohio crime lab van sat in the building's garage. Carrick witnessed detectives removing boxes of evidence, items that could bridge the gap between circumstantial video and a conviction. What are they looking for? Shoes that match the distinctive tread patterns found in the Ohio snow. Detectives are searching for journals, diaries, or even shrine-like photos of Mo'Nique that would prove the 2017 divorce was never final in McKee's mind. The exact moment McKee began tracking the Tepe's new life. The tragedy is compounded by the staggering amount of effort Michael McKee put into building the life he allegedly threw away. To become a vascular surgeon, McKee committed over 15 years to his education and training. 2006 to 2010, undergrad at Ohio State. 2010 to 2014, OSU College of Medicine. 2015 to 2020, a rigorous 5-year residency in Roanoke, Virginia. 2020 to 2022, a specialized fellowship at the University of Maryland. By the time of his arrest, he was a highly paid specialist at OSF St. Anthony in Rockford, Illinois. However, signs of professional friction were emerging. In 2023, McKee was named in a medical malpractice lawsuit in Nevada, and his license in that state had recently expired. Investigators are exploring whether these professional setbacks, combined with the sight of Mo'Nique thriving in a new marriage with 2 children, triggered a narcissistic break. As retired Detective Commander Will Spieler notes, the evidence released so far, the pigeon-toed walk and the vehicle tracking, is powerful, but it is circumstantial. The defense, led by attorney Steve Weiss, will likely argue that being in the area is not the same as pulling the trigger. This is why the search of the Chicago condo is vital. If police found the 9mm murder weapon or blood-stained clothing hidden in the luxury suite, the case moves from a theory of obsession to an open and shut execution. While Michael McKee sits in a cell awaiting his return to Ohio, the focus remains on the real victims, the 4-year-old and the 1-year-old left behind. The 4-year-old, specifically, is at an age where the memory of that night and the sudden disappearance of Mom and Dad will leave a permanent scar. As the Tepe family prepares for a legal battle that could result in the death penalty under Ohio's aggravated murder statute, the question remains: was the release of 8 years of festering rage worth the destruction of 3 families and a 15-year career? For Michael McKee, The answer will now be determined by a jury of his peers. And as always, you've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, empathy, and respect for those who can no longer speak for themselves. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button and comment your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, the truth is never buried.